Hi, I'm Josh Recording, and welcome to another Death Battle prediction video. But first, Macho Man versus the Kool-Aid Man. I'm a little bit surprised, honestly, that the Kool-Aid Man ended up winning. I felt that he was more hacksy overall. Um, but a lot of the things, like for the WWE comics that they brought up, um, made me kind of lean towards Macho Man. But again, this is something that I'm not all that into, so I did kind of take a lot of people's word for how strong these feats were, whether they were consistent or valid. And in the end, the Death Battle team didn't seem to even really use any of the comic feats. So I'm curious if it's because they didn't think that any of them added anything, or if they just didn't use it as a media source for it. So who knows? It's very interesting, but ultimately it is kind of just a silly fight. So, not taking it too crazy. The animation was pretty fun. The killing blow was, again, very fun. I see a lot of people complaining about how whiz and boomstick centric the episode was, which I mean, fair. When you have a pattern for 149 episodes and then change it up with one episode, it's gonna feel a bit weird to some people, but I didn't see any problem with it. Yeah, fun episode. It was alright. Certainly not the best one of the season, but this has been a pretty solid season so far. So even saying if it's like down near the bottom of the pack, that's still pretty high praise. Alright, and then we have Dio versus Alucard, which is one of the historic fights that they've just been having so many people make requests for years. Since the show started, people have wanted this fight, and it's pretty clear cut. Yeah, it's not as good of a debate as some people think it is, but it's fun. So the big thing is understanding how Alucard works. A lot of people think he can just respawn unlimitedly, like he's basically just fully immortal, but he's not. How it works essentially is that he has the like millions of souls in himself, and then he allocates the damage from an attack to the souls in order to regen from it and heal, essentially. So all you really have to do to beat Alucard is outlast all those souls. It's kind of a weird amount of souls, so sure, it'll take a while, but they've got a while. It's not like there's any specific reason why it can't. And before people say, hey, Dio can't be in the sunlight, that's not a win condition for a few reasons. First of which is, one, Dio's not an idiot. He knows that if the sun is coming up, he can do something called going inside. It's what half of us do all our lives. Other than that, he can just, well, actually, as part of staying inside, Alucard has no reason to try to press the issue to keep him outside, because that's not how vampires work in Hellsing. They can just be out and about as vampires, and he would have no reason to be like, oh yeah, this vampire's probably weak to sunlight. So I don't see that as being particularly valid. Also, could be a cloudy day. I don't think Death Battle is going to hinge its winner on the weather forecast. So then we get to the meat of this fight, which is basically the stats themselves, because if Dio didn't have the stats to kill Alucard billions of times, then he wouldn't be getting very far into this fight. Thing is, he does. So he has a pretty solid strength advantage over Alucard. His own regen is enough that with his durability advantage, Alucard's not going to be making much headway if he does hit him, which he won't, because I don't know if you know about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure characters. They fast. That's basically like their claim to fame in the versus community, is they are fast and they are hacksy, and Dio is no different. He's not as hacksy as some of the other crazy ones, but I think like the Hanged Man feat got like 26 times the speed of light or something. While I'm pretty sure Alucard's best speed feat is when he caught Rip Van Winkle's bullet in his teeth. Yeah, that's not a very close gap. That's definitely something you can say. Even if you kind of calc stack a little bit and like compare her bullets to the speed of like the fighter jets that she shot, and then compare that to how Alucard reacted to it, it would still probably be under like 100, Mach 100, which, yeah, so Alucard's basically a statue. Dio has however long he wants to just whittle through those souls, and none of the specific souls that Alucard has have any counters to Dio. The silver bullets that Alucard's guns use won't be particularly effective, because of the fact that Dio as a vampire is less of a traditional vampire. A lot of the things that are commonly associated with killing vampires don't kill Dio. For example, he has touched a silver cross and just crushed it in his hand when someone was like praying with it. So just, you can't assume that all vampires across all of fiction have the same weaknesses. They have to actually show those weaknesses in their own medium. So then we come to what other arguments are there really for this one? This is, oh yeah, so sneak attacks. Some people say that Dio could get killed if he gets surprised by an attack, which isn't going to happen with the combination of the speed and the world. So his stand not only can stop time, so that he can just wail on Alucard, deal with any attacks, etc. His stand itself is also going to be protecting Dio. So if there's ever a time where Dio is looking one way and Alucard does his shadowy sneak on behind him and goes to get a free shot in, the stand can just stop him. And it's unclear. I will say that there is some wiggle room on if Alucard could damage or kill a stand. He doesn't have the stats to necessarily, but it's worth mentioning that Alucard can destroy souls, though he has only done so when those souls were within himself. It stands to reason that you could argue he could potentially destroy a stand and interact with a soul. Sure, I'll go with it. It's not really going to happen because, again, all these other advantages, but it's something they could mention. And then the big elephant in the room. We have Schrodinger. First off, I don't think they're going to use Schrodinger. For those who do not know, at the end of Hellsing, there is a being that can basically, as long as they perceive themselves as being alive, they are. If they believe they're alive, they are. So, once Alucard, it's basically part of the villain's plan that when Alucard, like, sends out all of his forces, all of his souls and himself, and, like, does a shitload of killing and then brings all the blood from London back in, they have Schrodinger kill himself and go down into the bloodstream so that Alucard will unwittingly absorb Schrodinger. And because of Alucard's lack of I guess, self, because he had so many souls, it blipped him out of existence for about 30 years. So that stands to reason that he's susceptible to a few things there. One, his drink being spiked, if he's bringing things back in, which will come up later. It tells us that he needs to have a firm sense of self, which again will come up later. And it's also incredibly vague. There's very little explanation for any of Schrodinger's abilities. They say, like, he's everywhere and nowhere, and some people interpret that as being omnipresent, but there are several times where Schrodinger himself loses an object and has to actually search for it. He doesn't inherently know where he is, and that is just not something that someone who's omnipresent will be able to do. You can't lose things because you would just be everywhere and know. So really, Schrodinger is more of a contingent immortality with teleportation. That's more or less the way that I would spin it. But here's the thing. Alucard had to destroy every single soul that he had, other than himself and Schrodinger, in order to be able to use those powers. So, if we were using Schrodinger, we would not be able to be using any of Alucard's other abilities, really. So it would kind of wipe out the whole draw of the fight. That's a lot of the stuff you want to see, is this big army that Alucard can send out made of his souls. So I don't see them using Schrodinger, as well as the fact that, again, it is vague, and it is kind of like an end of series, like, non-standard aspect. And it just doesn't represent most of the series. So I don't see them using it, but even if they do, Dio still can counter it. You would think that that would be very hard. But, again, because it's not omnipresent, Dio's time stops will still be able to stop Alucard in time, and he will be able to get free shots in and be able to do some of his other abilities too. Now, people always talk about the world, and that's basically the only thing that they ever talk about for him, but he has several other abilities as well. Most notably, he has flesh buds that can basically control people into doing exactly what he wants. So it stands to reason that because Alucard does have human physiology when he takes his human form, like as shown when Walter like cut him in half down the middle and there was a brain in there, so he does have human physiology when he's in a human form, which is what he typically fights in. You could very well argue that his flesh buds would be able to control the brainwaves and make Alucard believe he's not real. But you might be asking yourself, wait, how would Dio know that that's how he has to win? Well, people often forget that Dio actually has two stands, not just one. He has the world, and he has essentially Hermit Purple. So it's not clear whether or not it is exactly it, but it looks exactly the same and is a family, lineage one. So it stands to reason that it should be able to do the same things that Joseph's does, which in this case, it is he can touch an object or break an object, and it will show him what he needs to know about the object. So it stands to reason that if he uses Alucard for that and, say, rips off an arm and uses that, he could very well find out how Schrodinger's powers work and how to counter them. So he has everything on the table that he really needs to win. There isn't too much that you could really say gives Alucard an advantage. He has just a lot of souls, so it's just a matter of time. That's all it really is. He's just delaying the inevitable. It really, really doesn't help that When Alucard does like release restraint level 0, he just sends all of his souls out as a standing army, which was really bad. It's not a good thing. Um, when your regen is tied to your souls, um, you don't want to send those out because it's just going to end the fight immediately, because he's not going to be stronger than Dio. The army's not going to do anything to Dio. And then Dio will actually be able to kill him outright. Um, yeah, I think this one's just very firmly in Dio's court. He has almost every advantage, and just Alucard doesn't have a very good counter for most of what he can do. And yeah, so that's all I'm gonna have for this one. And you guys have yourselves a great one, and we will see what the next one is.